What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the JT Sports Podcast, aka JT Sports Live. I'm your host, JT. If you haven't already, make sure that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We upload NFL and college football videos daily. We go live at 5 p.m. Eastern Time every day, Monday through Friday. I got a very exciting episode for you guys. We're going to be discussing why the Patriots offense will improve under new offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien. A lot of people are really irritating me with their take on Bill O'Brien and what his role is going to be with the New England Patriots. Eric Bieniemy, I think that his success is largely going to determine if the Commanders make it to the postseason or not. How the Atlanta Falcons can make it to the playoffs, you guys already know I'm not really a huge believer in the Falcons going into this year, but I'm going to put my opinions aside and I'm going to lay out the game plan for how Atlanta can make it to the postseason and prove me wrong. And lastly, who will win the ACC this year, man? The Vegas odds have been going back and forth between Florida State and Clemson. It's most likely going to come down to one of those teams. Can FSU dethrone Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers this year, man? Let's start off with this, right? A lot of people don't know what the F they're talking about when it comes to the New England Patriots hiring Bill O'Brien as their OC. And I say what the F just to keep it PG-13, but I'm not going to make any promises that I'm going to be able to keep this segment PG-13 because a lot of the opinions surrounding Bill O'Brien and the Patriots bringing him in to replace Matt Patricia have been really wrong, to say the least. I mean, people make it seem like Bill O'Brien is the Patriots head coach or he's finna be their general manager. Like, the Patriots hired Bill O'Brien to call the plays on offense. Did you not see how bad their offense was last year? These boys made Matt Patricia their offensive coordinator. This dude was a defensive coordinator, man. This man never called plays. And despite that, Bill Belichick, with his second-year franchise quarterback, after a promising rookie season, says, you know what, I'm going to ruin Mac Jones and make Matt Patricia my offensive coordinator. Like, give a round of applause to Bill Belichick. If you want to find the perfect way to ruin your franchise QB, do what he did and make your former defensive coordinator your offensive coordinator. I mean, there's no way the Patriots offense can be any worse under Bill O'Brien than what it was under Matt Patricia, man. And people make it seem like Bill O'Brien is a crappy coach, bro. This dude is actually a really solid football coach. During his time with the Houston Texans, they weren't losers his whole entire tenure there. They won the AFC South multiple times. Not just that, but they made multiple playoff appearances. And let's not forget that Bill O'Brien, this dude won a playoff game with Brock the Giraffe Osweiler. That dude signed one of the worst free agency contracts in the history of the NFL. And despite that, Bill O'Brien was able to win a playoff game with them. Bill O'Brien is a solid offensive coordinator. And if you are an Alabama fan, you may not have been the biggest fan of Bill O'Brien, but the dude definitely wasn't terrible. If you have to grade Bill O'Brien and his job as Alabama's offensive coordinator on a letter grade scale of A through F, you probably most likely will give him a B to maybe a B plus at best. Now, he definitely wasn't one of Alabama's better offensive coordinators that Nick Saban has brought in, but the dude definitely wasn't bad. And with New England, I think that his offense and with his philosophy, he's going to be able to not only help this offense improve this year, but he's also going to be able to save Mac Jones, because many people kind of view this as a make or break year for Mac Jones. A lot of people aren't really high on the guy. And some people may consider Mac Jones already to be a bust. But with Bill O'Brien, this is somebody who has a lot of familiarity with Bill Belichick and this Patriots organization. He was on the Patriots coaching staff from 2007 to 2011. Every single year he was on their staff prior to him leaving. They had a top 10 offense. And the year that he called the plays in 2011, They went to the Super Bowl. You remember when they had Gronkowski and Aaron the Killer Hernandez going crazy with their 2 tight end sets? Yeah, they lost to the New York Giants in the Super Bowl, but they had one of the NFL's best offenses that year. But yeah, people try to discredit what Bill O'Brien did as the Patriots play caller in 2011 because they didn't win the Super Bowl. Like what? The Philadelphia Eagles didn't win the Super Bowl this past year, and yet nobody was discrediting Shane Steichen? I mean, a lot of people are really lost or really uninformed when it comes to Bill O'Brien and what his role is going to be with New England and how he's going to be able to improve this offense. If you listen to Bill O'Brien, this dude knows what the hell he's talking about when it comes to coaching football. This dude has like hundreds of videos on YouTube of him breaking down plays, route concepts, how quarterbacks are supposed to play the position, how they're supposed to be taught how to play QB. This dude has hundreds of coaching clinics. This dude knows what the hell he's talking about when it comes to the X's and O's of the game. He didn't work out with Houston, but he wasn't a bad coach with the Texans. Things went downhill when he ended up becoming the general manager. With New England, you're having a guy who's going to be able to come in. He's going to be able to help develop Mac Jones because last year, Mac Jones didn't get developed at all. The dude took a lot of steps in the wrong direction, and it was mainly due to Matt Patricia. Bill O'Brien is somebody who specializes in being able to coach up QBs. Now, he may not have the greatest track record with quarterbacks in the past, such as Brock Osweiler, Tom Savage, but you got to look at what he has right now in front of him. And what he has right now in front of him is Mac Jones, a quarterback who perfectly fits what Bill O'Brien wants to do offensively. Bill O'Brien, I was listening to one of the videos that somebody had put out at another coaching clinic that he had did years ago, describing what he wants out of his quarterback. He wants a quarterback that's, one, accurate with the football. That's one of the most important. He doesn't care if you're not a great athlete or if you don't have the strongest arm. All he cares about is how accurately you can throw and distribute the football. That's what Mac Jones does really well. The second thing that Bill O'Brien wants out of his starting quarterback is a guy who is able to properly be able to process defenses. That's something that I think Mac Jones does a pretty solid job of. That was one of the reasons why he was a first-round pick coming out of Alabama, because he was probably one of the best quarterbacks coming out of that draft when it came to his ability to process and read defenses. He's looking for somebody who can make good decisions with the football. Mac Jones is the perfect quarterback for Bill O'Brien's offense. Yeah, the dude may not have been the greatest head coach for the Houston Texans, but he wasn't dog shit like how people in the national media try to make him out to be. And what really irritates me is when people say that the Patriots offense isn't going to improve under Bill O'Brien, bro. I'm willing to bet money, at least $20 to $30, that the Patriots offense will be better in every statistical category under Bill O'Brien. It was amazing that they were even able to win the amount of games that they did with Fatty P calling the plays last year, dog. There's no way this Patriots offense can get any worse than what it was last year, because last year was peak terrible. I mean, Bill O'Brien is a guy who has a lot of familiarity with New England, their organization, and what Bill Belichick wants to do offensively. Now, they may not be the most talented team in this division or in the NFL when it comes to their personnel. The receiving core is less to be desired. They got Devontae Parker. You have Tyquan Thornton, who you spent the high draft pick on in the previous year's draft. You do have two promising rookie wide receivers that many Patriots fans are excited about, and Pop and Kayshon Boutte. And your running back position, you got Rhamondre freaking Stevenson. He was pretty much the only reliable weapon that you had on offense last year. At least Matt Patricia knew how to use Rhamondre Stevenson. That's the only thing that you can give Matt Patricia credit for, was Rhamondre Stevenson's breakout year. Now, I'm not saying that the Patriots are going to have an elite offense under Bill O'Brien. As a matter of fact, I expect their offense to be average to maybe slightly above average at best. But if you're a Patriots fan, you're okay with having an average offense because an average offense is good enough to get you into the playoffs maybe. You already know that the Patriots defense is going to be really good. All you need is for the offense to be better than what it was last year. And I don't really think the bar is set too high after what Matt Patricia did calling plays for New England last year. Like, I promise you guys, Bill O'Brien is not a shitty coach. This dude can coach some football, man. After y'all get done watching this, go on YouTube and look up Bill O'Brien coaching clinics. And please tell me that this dude doesn't know football, because he does. This dude makes it seem like he knows football more than the majority of offensive coordinators and head coaches out there, man. Like, if you guys were to watch 2 or 3 of Bill O'Brien's coaching clinics, bruh, you would be more knowledgeable on the game of football than what you were prior, man. I was listening to him break down one play, and I was just like, damn, I run this play all the time in Madden. And now, every time I run the play in Madden, it's damn near a money play for me. This dude, Bill O'Brien, is a solid coach. He's not the greatest coach. He's not an elite offensive coordinator or play caller in many people's eyes, but this dude is good enough to get the job done for New England. New England is going into a really pivotal year where most people expect them to be the worst team in this division. If New England is going to make it to the postseason this year and exceed expectations, they're going to need good coaching, they're going to need to be disciplined, and they're going to have to get back to their old ways of running things. And what we saw out of New England last year was uncharacteristic. They weren't disciplined. The offense wasn't consistent. It wasn't efficient. Even though this offense hasn't been at the level that it was when they had Tom Brady at QB, this offense was decent Mac Jones rookie season. So if they can get back to that level with some slight improvement out of Mac Jones, they're going to have a chance to compete for a playoff spot simply because of how good this defense is going to be this year. And plus, even though you have to give Bill Belichick a lot of criticism for how he mishandled his offensive coordinator situation last year, this dude is still a top 5, top 10 head coach in the league. And you know, as long as Bill Belichick is your head coach, you're going to find a way to win 7 to 8 games. Bill O'Brien, under his tutelage, this offense is going to improve, man. I was listening to Mike Florio and Chris Sims, and they were breaking down one of Mac Jones' press conferences, and they were talking about how this offense is going to be normal. Like, what's wrong with normal? What's wrong with having a functional offense? That's something that New England didn't have last year. I'll take normal over crappy, because that's what we saw last year. Mac Jones was cussing out Matt Patricia last season. He had every right to. The offense was so bad and the offensive play calling was so terrible that Mac Jones had to go all over and beyond to seek help outside of the organization. That's how bad this situation was. Bill O'Brien, not only is he going to be able to improve this offense, but he's going to be able to kind of be a stabilizing factor in this Patriots organization. Like, a lot of people in the national media may not be happy or excited about Bill O'Brien, but many Patriots fans are happy as hell to have this guy in Foxborough. Mac Jones is super excited that Bill O'Brien is calling plays this season. I mean, Bill O'Brien is a way better offensive coordinator than what Matt Patricia was. Matt Patricia never called plays as an OC. This dude was a defensive coordinator. This dude was inexperienced. Bill O'Brien has over 3 decades of coaching experience. For you to say that this offense will not improve under him just tells me that you're extremely misinformed. It's not that hard to go from Matt Patricia and replace him with Bill O'Brien. Yeah, I know that the bar was set pretty low, But Bill O'Brien is not a bad coach. This dude isn't the general manager, and he's not the head coach. He's strictly the offensive coordinator. The Patriots had one of their best offenses in franchise history when he was calling the plays in 2011. They went to the freaking Super Bowl, and yet I was listening to Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp discuss it, and Shannon Sharp used it as a knock against Bill O'Brien that they didn't win the Super Bowl the year he was calling the plays in 2011, man. And I was just really disappointed because Shannon Sharp is a Hall of Famer. He's played this game at the highest level possible. You think if anybody would know the impact of having somebody who has experience calling plays versus somebody who's learning on the job, going from a defensive coordinator to offensive coordinator, you think Shannon Sharp will understand that this offense has a high chance to improve with an experienced play caller versus an unexperienced one. It just seems like people in the national media just want to use Bill O'Brien as the meat and potatoes of their lame, corny jokes that nobody's laughing at. Bill O'Brien is going to improve New England's offense. This offense isn't going to be one of the best in the league, but it should at least be solid. And if it's 3 notches better than what it was last season, I'm pretty sure Patriots fans will be okay with that. Patriots fans are not expecting miracles out of this offense. They have a realistic understanding of what Bill O'Brien is going to bring to the table. They are okay with having an average offense. Hell, average is way better than shitty. That's what the Patriots put on the field last year. It's a miracle that they were able to win the amount of games that they did last year. Hell, they were still in the playoff hunt despite how bad their offense was last season. Mac Jones and Patriots fans are really happy to have Bill O'Brien as their offensive coordinator. They may not make it to the playoffs this year, but this offense definitely is going to be way better than what it was last season. And with that, this team is going to be better this year than what it was previously. But trying to say that Bill O'Brien is going to fail as the OC and this offense isn't going to improve under him, man, I really think if you believe that, you're really misinformed. There's no way you can tell me Bill O'Brien, somebody who has over 3 decades of coaching experience on the offensive side of football, is going to be even worse or the same as Matt Patricia, a guy who never called plays on offense and was a former defensive coordinator. If you want the recipe to how to ruin your young franchise quarterback, do what Bill Belichick did last season and set him up to fail behind the garbage offensive line, a wide receiver that lacks dynamic playmakers, and a guy who never called plays on offense. The Patriots may not be super talented when it comes to their wide receiver position, but you're going to have somebody who's going to be able to cook and scheme things up. He's going to be able to find a way to maximize this personnel. Bill O'Brien is not a bad coach, and he's definitely, sure as hell, isn't a bad OC. You may be a little bit upset because Bill O'Brien returns to New England and you wanted Bill Belichick to go outside of the organization, but you guys know how Bill Belichick runs the Patriots. I call this organization the OTF Patriots, only the family, because when you look at Bill O'Brien, he has a lot of ties to this organization and Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick, from what we've seen in the past, normally likes hiring guys on his coaching staff that he has history or good familiarity with. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with going back to what you're comfortable with. And Bill O'Brien, as the OC, is what Bill Belichick is comfortable with. I don't get all of the knocks that people have against the Patriots hiring Bill O'Brien. This dude is levels better than Matt Patricia. And that's what people tend to not really understand. Yeah, the bar isn't set high, but damn. You mean to tell me that you don't think this offense isn't at least going to be a tad bit better at worst than what it was last year? Bill O'Brien, on his worst days calling plays, is still a better offensive coordinator than Matt Patricia. And that says more about how terrible this offensive coordinator situation was than it does Bill O'Brien. This dude is not a bad coach, man. Go on YouTube and look up Bill O'Brien coaching clinics. This dude knows his shit. This dude is a really good coach. He may not be the best, but I think he's a pretty good OC, and I think he most definitely is what New England needed. He's going to improve this offense. He's going to bring some stability to that quarterback room. Now that you're going to have somebody who's going to be more respected in Mac Jones' eyes because he actually knows what he's doing. Mac Jones was blowing up on Monday Night Football against the Chicago Bears, just giving it to Matt Patricia because the dude didn't know what he was doing. The dude was calling stupid plays, and he was setting New England up to fail. When you have a team that's not all that talented, you need good coaching, or at least solid coaching, to be able to maximize that personnel. The more talented of a team you have, the less effective you kind of need the coaching to be at times. But when you have a team that isn't all that talented, you need elite coaching to be able to put those guys in the proper situations or the proper roles to succeed. I.e., Brian Dabo with the New York Giants. This dude had Isaiah Hodgins cooking. Matt Patricia would have never had the Giants offense functioning at the level that it was under Brian Dabo if he was the OC. This dude, Bill O'Brien, is a solid coach. In my opinion, he's going to be a good OC for New England this year, and that's why I'm not counting out the Patriots this season. But that's a conversation for another day. The Patriots offense is going to improve under Bill O'Brien, and I'm really annoyed at the takes I'm hearing from people in the national media. People in the national media don't know what the F they're talking about when it comes to Bill O'Brien, fam. And it's really annoying. You guys get paid millions of dollars to talk about this shit. You're considered an analyst. You're supposed to be able to break down the game and help the fans have a better understanding of what they're watching. But instead, you get on national media, you spew incorrect facts, and for most of the people that's talking about Bill O'Brien, they must not have watched too many Patriots games if they think that this offense is not going to improve under him. This dude has 31 years of coaching experience on the offensive side of football. I'm pretty sure he's going to be better than the guy who never called plays on offense and was a former defensive coordinator. Let's stick on the topic of offensive coordinators, man. Eric Bieniemy, now you guys already know I'm really high on Eric Bieniemy. And many people in the national media have been going to war for this guy for over the last 3 years that Eric Bieniemy should be an NFL head coach. Like, literally, bro, there's literally people that I believe right now in the national media that are willing to protest for Eric Bieniemy being a head coach. And this dude had a really significant impact on the Kansas City Chiefs, winning the couple of Super Bowls that they have won when he was on Kansas City staff over the last 5 years. There were 2 plays in this past year's Super Bowl in the Chiefs' win over the Eagles where they scored 2 touchdowns in the red zone due to a play that Eric Bieniemy saw on film that the Philadelphia Eagles defense struggled to stop. And he ended up seeing that on film. He ended up bringing it to Andy Reid's attention. They put it in the game plan. And that play was a large reason why they ended up beating Philadelphia. And if you don't know the play I'm talking about, it's that little motion play that they have where they send the guy in motion and he comes right back out. They scored 2 touchdowns off that play. Eric Bieniemy is a really bright offensive mind. And if this dude is as good as a coach as many people on ESPN, FS1, and whoever else make him out to be, he should be able to elevate Sam Howell. People were getting really upset at me because I said that Sam Howell is going to have the best season out of all the second-year QBs. And my reasoning for that was because of Eric Bieniemy's tutelage. If you have a good offensive coordinator, he's going to be able to elevate the play of the whole entire offense. Washington has a really good team around Sam Howell. They're going to have an elite defense. Their defense has been elite ever since Ron Rivera has took over as the head coach there. So all they need is for this offense to hold up and do their part, and this without a doubt is a playoff team. You got Curtis Samuel, Scary Terry, arguably a top wide receiver in the game right now. You have Jahan Dotson, who is on pace to having a really good rookie season until he got held back due to injuries. You got Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson in the backfield. The offensive line is a little shaky, but it should improve under Eric Bieniemy calling the plays. If Washington doesn't make it to the playoffs this year, I don't want to hear any more talk and any more arguments about how Eric Bieniemy deserves to be a head coach. Because if this team doesn't make it to the postseason, 9 times out of 10, that means that this offense wasn't good. Scott Turner was not a good offensive coordinator. This offense was below average. This offense is what kept the Commanders from making it to the playoffs last year. This team went 8-1. That's what some people tend to forget at times. This team was a quarterback away or a good offensive coordinator away from being in the playoffs. And if Eric Bieniemy comes in and he ends up being as good as a head coach as many people expect him to be when he ends up getting that opportunity, there's no reason why he shouldn't be a good offensive coordinator. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and everybody who has played or coached under Eric Bieniemy has had nothing but good things to say about this dude. The only issues that I hear when it comes to Eric Bieniemy is that he's really tough at times when it comes to how he comes at players. He's a little bit, hard on players, really hard on them because he holds them accountable. I saw a clip on TikTok when he was coaching, or I guess he was on Minnesota staff, and Adrian Peterson came to practice late. And I don't know if he was serious or if it was a little joke, but he basically said, damn, bro, like, what you doing coming in late? And Adrian Peterson was like, oh, it was the trainers and stuff. They were telling me. He was like, man, I ain't trying to hear all that, man. Be accountable. Show up on time. No excuses. So if Eric Bieniemy, if his only issues is that he comes at players really hard at times because he holds them accountable, I think that makes him an even better coach. You see, there's nothing wrong with being coached hard. A lot of people in this generation now are a little soft. They can't take hard coaching. Hard coaching is what brings the best out of you. Now, there are certain things that as a coach, you probably shouldn't say to players, and there is a certain line that shouldn't be crossed. But I think Eric Bieniemy is going to be perfectly fine when it comes to being able to get along with the players on the Commanders' offense. Sam Howell recently in one of his press conferences said, yeah, he coaches us pretty hard, but that's what they need. That's what's going to elevate the Commanders. This is a team that had Scott Turner as their OC. He was awful. He held this team back from making it to the postseason. Now with Eric Bieniemy, somebody who is one of the better offensive minds in the game at the helm calling the plays, this offense should be able to at least be top 12, top 13 in the league this year. This is a really talented unit. I've been going back and forth with New York Giants fans for the last 2 weeks because they feel that they have a more talented offense than Washington, and no the hell you don't. There's no way you're going to tell me that Paris Campbell, Isaiah Hodgins, Jalen Hyatt are better than Jahan Dotson, Scary Terry, and Curtis Samuel. I mean, bruh, you got Daniel Jones at QB. All respect to Daniel Jones, but if Eric Bieniemy ends up being as good as a coach as many people expect him to be, Sam Howell's play should elevate. People make it seem like these players just coach themselves. No, they don't. They need to have somebody who puts them in a proper situation to succeed. You see, that's the problem with a lot of you people and why y'all record predictions always suck, because you just judge a team based on who the players are. You don't take time to dive into who is calling the plays, because the play calling and the coordinators are a large reason for some of these players' success. Some of these players leave certain teams and you never hear from them again. You want to know why? Because of different schemes that they don't fit in, or the play calling not being as good as what it was at their previous destination. If Sam Howell ends up having a good season, it's going to be largely due to Eric Bieniemy's play calling. This team has too much talent for this offense to not be good. Eric Bieniemy was a really big asset to Kansas City during his 5 years with that franchise. This dude is going to be able to elevate this whole entire team. And if this team doesn't end up making it to the playoffs, I think it's largely going to be due to this offense not being good under Eric Bieniemy calling plays. This is Eric Bieniemy's big chance to prove himself of why he deserves to be an NFL head coach. Now, I don't know why this dude can't get a head coaching job. Some people say it's because they don't know how much of Kansas City's success on offense he was responsible for. You got some people who believe that the situation with Patrick Mahomes and having Andy Reid there kind of undermined how much of an impact he had in that offense, having the success that he did. But now in Washington, if Washington's offense has any success, we know who's going to be behind it. This dude is even assigned to being an assistant coach for this team. So not only is he going to have all to say when it comes to the offense, but he's also going to have some additional responsibilities when it comes to managing this team, with duties as being the assistant coach. If the Washington Commanders make it to the playoffs, it's not just going to be because they're going to have an elite defense, but also because this offense is going to be good enough to get them there. When you got a good offense, that helps out your defense. That's what some people tend to overlook. If your defense constantly has to come back on the field due to your offense going 3 and out or not being able to sustain drives, of course it's going to hold them back. But when you have an offense that's able to take care of the football, that's able to sustain drives and be efficient, it helps your defense out because then they're not on the field for so many plays. You want a good example of this? Look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense from 2019 compared to how good it was in 2020. The Buccaneers had an elite defense in 2019, but it just didn't show statistically. You want to know why? Because you had Jameis Turnover Winston turn the football over at an alarming rate. It's like every time the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got to stop on defense in 2019, 30 seconds later, after they got done sipping that cup of Gatorade, they were right back on the field. When you have an offense that can take care of the football and that can be efficient and keep drives going, it keeps your defense off the field, which gives those guys longer breaks. They don't get tired as fast. They don't get fatigued as fast. Eric Bieniemy, his impact on the Commanders this season is going to be really big, and it's going to have a large determining factor when it comes to if the Washington Commanders make it to the playoffs or not. I really believe that Eric Bieniemy's success is going to make or break the Washington Commanders this season. If this guy ends up being phenomenal calling plays for Washington, like how many of us expect him to be, the Commanders, without a doubt, are going to be a playoff team because they already have a top 5 defense. I mean, their defensive line is arguably the best in the NFL. You can say it's just as good as the 49ers or the Philadelphia Eagles. You may not know that because how many of you guys are really watching the Washington Commanders? Come on, man. Like, this defense is elite. It's been elite nearly every single year that Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio have been up there in Washington. All they need is a good OC who can elevate this offense, and they need to have some stability at QB, which is something that they also haven't had, where they were going back and forth between Taylor Heinicke and Carson Wentz. Now you have Sam Howell, and Ron Rivera's banking on this guy being the franchise QB to lead them to the promised land. And when you have a good offensive coordinator, he's going to be able to help your young quarterback develop. He's going to be able to help your young quarterback become the guy that you want him to be to lead you to the playoffs. If Washington doesn't make it to the playoffs, I feel it's largely going to be because Eric Bieniemy was a whiff at offensive coordinator. But if they do, I think it's going to be because this offense was really good with him calling the plays. This defense already is top notch. All you need is the play calling to be there. Now, you guys already know I'm not a big believer in the Atlanta Falcons going into this season. I don't really think they're good enough to be a playoff team. But for this segment, I'm going to put my opinions and beliefs when it comes to how I view the Falcons aside, and I'm going to explain to you guys how the Atlanta Falcons can make it to the playoffs. So if the Atlanta Falcons make it to the postseason, I believe that they need all of these things to happen. The first thing is they need to take care of business at home. They don't play too many good teams at home in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium this year. The best teams that they play are the Washington Commanders and the Minnesota Vikings. And if you exclude the NFC South opponents that they played the Packers, Texans, and Colts at home. They should be able to win 3 of those games. The Texans and Colts, they're in a little bit of a rebuild. When you look at the Houston Texans, yeah, they're going to be better than what people expect them to be, but still, they're going to have a lot of ups and downs because for the most part, their team is fairly young and they have a new head coach. You got the Indianapolis Colts who are going to be fun to watch with Anthony Richardson at the helm at QB, but with Anthony Richardson being the starter, you know that he's going to have some highs and he's going to have some lows, so there's going to be a lot of inconsistencies in his performance. So they should be able to beat the Texans and the Colts. And for the Green Bay Packers, you don't really know what the hell you're going to get out of Jordan Love this year. They're probably one of the biggest wild cards going into this season. So the Atlanta Falcons, their home schedule isn't all that difficult. Their best 2 teams are going to be the Minnesota Vikings and the Washington Commanders, who they're going to have to host. The next thing that Atlanta needs to be able to do is they need solid to above average or slightly above average quarterback play out of Desmond Ridder. Desmond Ridder doesn't need to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons to make it to the postseason. You want to know why? Because first of all, this division doesn't really have too many good or proven QBs. The best QB in this division at the moment is Derek Carr. And Derek Carr, at best, is a top 12, top 13 QB, and he needs a good team around him for him to be successful. And I have reservations about this New Orleans coaching staff. Like, I thought that New Orleans coaching staff was going to be really good, despite Sean Payton retiring, because they retained most of the guys who were under Sean Payton for all those years he was in New Orleans. And yet, Pete Carmichael, the Saints offensive coordinator, act like he forgot how to call plays and how to manage the offense last season. So I have a lot of reservations about New Orleans this year. Can you say they have a more talented team than the Falcons going into this season on offense? Yes, they do, but coaching matters. And I trust Arthur Smith way more than I trust New Orleans going into this season. So I don't know if Derek Carr is going to be good enough to get New Orleans into the playoffs, despite the fact that many people believe that he has a way better team around him than what he ever had with Las Vegas. We're going to see. But for Desmond Ridder, you don't really need this dude to be a top-level QB for the Falcons to make it to the postseason. All they need this dude to do is to take care of the football, don't turn it over, be able to extend plays at times, and get the ball to Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. That shouldn't be too hard to do. And the dude wasn't completely terrible last season. All right, he was pretty okay at times. He should be able to improve going into year 2 under Arthur Smith's system. So for Desmond Ridder, as long as this guy can give you average to above average QB play, you should be able to make it to the postseason. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their quarterback situation looks god-awful right now. Have you not seen their OTA so far? Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask can't even hit accurate receivers when they're running routes on the air with no DBs and no defense. Do you really trust them? I don't. Shit, I'll put more trust in Desmond Ridder than I would Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask down there in Tampa. And Bryce Young, you guys know I love me some Bryce Young. He's still a rookie. The jury's still out on him. But for Desmond Ridder, this division with the quarterbacks that currently are in it right now, they're not any of the best in the NFL. It's not like you're in the AFC West and you're going against Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes. You're going against Derek Carr, Bryce Young, or either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask. So for Desmond Ridder, you don't really need to play at an elite level to get Atlanta into the playoffs. And plus, you got to remember that Arthur Smith, his offensive philosophy is run the damn football. You got Bijan Robinson. You drafted this guy in the top 10. You better feed him. You better give this guy hella touches. And not just because you spent the high draft pick on him, but also because he's on 2 of my fantasy football squads. And I need all those damn fantasy points, people. All those damn fantasy points. So, Desmond Ridder, get the ball to Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Don't turn it over, and you should be okay. And it shouldn't be that difficult to do that. Kyle Pitts is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. Now, I won't say he's as good as George Kittle or Travis Kelce right now, but I probably would already consider Kyle Pitts to be a top 5 tight end in the game right now. Shouldn't be too hard to give that guy the football. Drake London had a really good rookie season, a better rookie season than what a lot of people give him credit for. He was held back by the QB play. So Desmond Ridder can give you solid, serviceable QB play. That should be good enough to get you to the postseason in this division with how the quarterback situation is in the NFC South. Now, the next thing that the Atlanta Falcons need in order for them to make it to the playoffs this year is that this pass defense really needs to improve under this new defensive coordinator and Ryan Nielsen. They need to be able to slow down guys like Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, with Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, Kevin O'Connell with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. A lot of people are doubting the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers, but with the talent that they have on that squad, they're going to be a serious threat in the AFC this year, and that offense is going to be really hard to stop. Y'all sleep on Aaron Rodgers all y'all want to and watch him wake y'all up. This Falcons defense is going to have to step up this year, man, and they need a pass rush. I don't know who the hell is going to step up this year and help out Grady Jarrett, but they need somebody else to be that 8 to 9 sack guy. I don't know if it's going to be David Onyemata, who they signed the free agency from New Orleans. I doubt it's going to be Calais Campbell. I was going back and forth with one Falcons fan who was like, man, we improved the pass rush, man. We signed Calais Campbell. Dog, Calais Campbell is 36 years old. If you're dependent on Calais Campbell to help you be that team that can consistently get after the QB, you're kind of lying to yourself, dog. He's 36 years old. You're asking too much out of Calais Campbell. Still a really solid player at his age, but if you think that Calais Campbell is going to be that guy in your defense to get you 8-9 sacks, man, you're kind of tripping. All right, you do have Lorenzo Carter, who, all right, maybe he could end up having a breakout season. Bud Dupree, if he can stay healthy, he can give you serviceable contributions at times. You got rookie Zach Harrison, who many Falcons fans are excited about, but I think he's more of a developmental project. I don't really know just how good he's going to be this season in his first year. I think it's probably going to take him 2 to 3 years to finally get things figured out, but they just need somebody to help out Grady Jarrett, and they need a pass rusher who can give you at least 8 to 9 sacks. And the reason why it's important for this pass rush to be consistent and for Grady Jarrett to not only be the only true threat when it comes to getting after the QB is because the Atlanta Falcons had the 31st worst third down defense in the NFL last season. A large reason for that is because of their lack of a consistent pass rush and a lack of pass rush threats outside of Grady Jarrett. If you want to be able to get off the field on third downs, which most of the times ends up being obvious passing situations, you got to be able to get after the QB. Then, when it comes to the secondary, you signed Jesse Bates, who is one of the better safeties in the league, and you have A.J. Terrell, who is a consensus top 10 cornerback. You need Jeff Okudah to step up for you. Now, Jeff Okudah, he wasn't bad last season for Detroit. He was just inconsistent. The first half of the season, he was really good. A lot of you people may not know this, but the first time the Detroit Lions played against the Minnesota Vikings, Jeff Okudah shut down Justin Jefferson. You may not believe it, but if you go back and watch that game, Jeff Okudah played the best game of his career the first time they played the Minnesota Vikings, I believe. He had a really good game against Justin Jefferson, and this guy was doing really good during the first half of the season. Now, after week 9, week 10, I don't know what the hell happened to Jeff Okudah. The guy just fell off a cliff. But this dude is pretty solid at times. And if Ryan Nielsen can get the most out of Jeff Okudah this year and can have him playing at a consistent level, this secondary should be really good. Richie Grant had a really good 2022 campaign, so your safety position is pretty solid. Your cornerback group can be pretty good as long as Jeff Okudah can be consistent. This guy isn't terrible, he's just inconsistent. So if you can get Jeff Okudah playing at a consistent level from week 1 to week 17, your secondary should be really good, and you should be able to slow down those quarterbacks such as Trevor Lawrence, Aaron Rodgers, and Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins. Now, this is really big for the Atlanta Falcons, and this isn't something that they need to do to make it to the postseason. But this definitely would improve their chances, which is being able to produce more turnovers. Last season, the Falcons were 26th in takeaways. Now this year, if they don't really improve at all in that department, I don't think it's going to make or break them. But it definitely will improve their chances, because anytime you have a team that wants to run the football and that's their identity, you know that they're going to take a lot of time off the clock. They're going to keep the opposing defense off the field. They're going to gas them. They're going to get them tired, and they're going to keep the opposing offense off the field. And for the Atlanta Falcons, if this offense ends up being as good as what it should be, since they do have Bijan Robinson now, they did have one of the best run-blocking offensive lines in the league. This offense, if you give them extra possessions, they can make you pay because of their ability to chew a lot of time off the clock and to be a ball control offense. So if this defense can produce way more turnovers this year, this offense is going to benefit from that, and it's going to be a big disadvantage to the opponents that they play, because they're going to be able to stay on the field for a lot longer, and they're going to be able to take a lot of time off the clock. So this defense, if they can produce more turnovers this season, they're going to end up being pretty good. Now, for the most part, I think for the Atlanta Falcons getting into the postseason, this is the most important. You need Arthur Smith to be able to outcoach the rest of the head coaches in this division outside of Frank Reich. I feel like Frank Reich right now is the best head coach in the NFC South. He's the most proven head coach in this division. He's the only head coach in this division that has been in the playoffs and has had some success to a certain extent. Todd Bowles, I don't think this guy is it. There are just certain head coaches who are just cut out to be coordinators. I think Todd Bowles is the prime example of that. You look at the New Orleans Saints with Dennis Allen, he's the biggest question mark on that team, in my opinion, and that whole entire coaching staff, because they didn't really look good at times last season. There were questionable decisions when it came to how they went about managing their quarterback situation between Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton. His late game clock management wasn't really ideal in the most part. So for Arthur Smith, if he can outcoach Todd Bowles and Dennis Allen, and let's say they split between the Carolina Panthers or even New Orleans and they just sweep Tampa, that's going to increase their chances of being able to make it to the postseason. And really, I think this season is largely going to hinge on Arthur Smith, because the Falcons still have a lot of question marks when it comes to how good is Desmond Ridder going to be, how good is this defense going to perform. Is the hiring of their new defensive coordinator going to work out? Because if this guy, Ryan Nielsen, ends up being a whiff and Arthur Smith made the wrong hire, it's going to backfire in his face big time. Because the key to being a successful head coach in the NFL is making sure that you can hire the right guys on your staff. And for Arthur Smith, if his hiring of his new DC doesn't work out and his defense remains as bad as what it was last season, they're not going to make it to the postseason, and they're going to make it even easier for the Carolina Panthers to win this division. I think the Carolina Panthers are the most talented team in the NFC South going into this year. They're going to have a top 10 defense. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. Frank Reich is really good with how he goes about getting efficient quarterback plays out of his QBs. And now that he has a young stud and Bryce Young got the helm at QB, as long as Bryce Young can stay upright and he can stay healthy, Carolina should be a lock for the postseason this year. So for Arthur Smith to be able to have success in the NFC South, he has to be able to outcoach some of the bottom tier coaches in this division, such as Dennis Allen and Todd Bowles. And if he can do that, I think the Atlanta Falcons should be able to make it into the postseason. This division is not that tough. There are many teams in this division that have a lot of question marks outside of the Carolina Panthers, Atlanta being one of them, and many of Atlanta's question marks all hinge on Arthur Smith and his job as the head coach for this organization. And even then, they're going to be playing against some really good teams. Minnesota is pretty well coached. They're going to have Brian Flores as their defensive coordinator. You already know that the Detroit Lions have one of the best offensive coordinators in the NFL. They have one of the best teams going into this season. If you want to be able to beat some of the best teams in the NFL, you're going to need more than talent to do so. You're going to need good coaching. Arthur Smith, if this guy ends up not being a good head coach, you're definitely going to see that reflected in some of these big games that they end up having to play this season against Jacksonville, Minnesota, Washington, and the New York Jets. The last thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I'm so excited to talk about, who is going to win the ACC, man? For the last decade, Clemson has reigned supreme in the Atlantic Coastal Conference. And you already know what Ric Flair says, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Woo! And there are many people who believe that the Florida State Seminoles are going to be able to win the ACC, even Vegas. Before I started recording, at this moment, FSU is the favorite to win the ACC in 2023. And if they're going to be able to do that, they have to be able to knock off Clemson. Now, we know that they didn't really do that last season because Clemson pretty much had their way with them last year. But this is a different Florida State team. This is the most talented FSU team that we have seen in a very long time. And if you're a Clemson fan, you better not be overlooking FSU, man. FSU has a super talented team. They're stacked on the offensive line. Their offensive line was a huge question mark going into last season. It's not anymore. This offensive line is elite. It's probably the best in this conference. Clemson's offensive line was inconsistent last year. And when you look at what FSU returns, they have some of the best players in college football at their positions. Jordan Travis arguably is one of the best QBs in college football. Some people think he's going to end up winning the Heisman. Now, I don't know about all that, but he is good enough to be able to end up being a finalist for it. He's super dynamic. This guy has improved tremendously as a passer. I remember one time, there was a point where every time Jordan Travis came into the game a couple of years ago, you knew FSU was going to run the football because he couldn't throw the ball to save his life. So his development as a passer has been really incredible. You got Trey Benson coming back. You got Johnny Wilson at wide receiver. This dude is 6'7", 235 damn pounds. How the hell do you stop this? All Jordan Travis literally has to do is throw that damn football up, and Johnny Wilson's going to catch it. This dude is 6'7", 235 pounds. And I can't, for the life of me, understand how the hell Arizona State allowed this dude to lead the program. If I was Arizona State and I was whoever is the new head coach at the time that Johnny Wilson was on Arizona State's roster, as soon as he would have hit the transport, I would have said, hey, bro, you got to come back, man. What do we have to pay you to stay in Arizona State? This dude is 6'7", 235 pounds, dog. Where do you find this at? This dude should end up being a first-round pick with no questions. Not just that, but you just got Michigan State transfer Keon Coleman. It doesn't get no better than that. And you already had Jaheim Bell transfer from South Carolina. This dude is one of the most athletically gifted tight ends in all of college football. He may just be more athletic than Brock Bowers. And that may be a hot take, but Brock Bowers wasn't doing what the hell South Carolina had Jaheim Bell doing. Jaheim Bell was playing Wildcat QB. He was playing fullback. He probably could have played running back. This dude was playing tight end. You probably could line this guy up at wide receiver. This guy is literally the definition of a chess piece. You can put this guy anywhere on the offense and he's going to succeed. This FSU offense is super stacked. When you look at this defense They returned most of their starters from last year. You got the number one or the second best cornerback coming out of the transfer portal, and Fentrell Cypress out of Virginia. He was the second ranked cornerback in the transfer portal. I called him number one, but I forgot about Travis Hunter. But can we really count Travis Hunter because we knew he was going to Colorado the whole entire time? But the point is, you got Fentrell Cypress, all right? Your secondary already is really good. Your only concern really is going to be at one of your safety positions. That's pretty much it. At linebacker, you're going to be stout. On the defensive line, you're going to be incredible, man. Like, you were able to get Jared Verse to return. This dude could have been a top 15 pick in this past year's NFL draft. Next year, he's expected to be a top 5, top 10 pick. You have Fabian Lovett at defensive tackle, one of the better interior defensive linemen in the nation. For Clemson, man, like, they're going to have their work cut out against them when they play FSU this year. Now, you already know that Dabo Swinney refuses to use the transfer portal, bro. Like, I think Dabo Swinney is one of the biggest trolls in college football when it comes to how he uses the transfer portal. The only time this man uses the transfer portal is to bring back a former quarterback that transferred out of the program, bruh. Like, this man just refuses to use the transfer portal at all. He believes in player development over everything, and that's good. But when they play Florida State this year, and Florida State smacks these boys around for 4 quarters, and they end up winning the ACC, I think, Dabo Swinney's going to start rethinking his philosophy. Because here's the thing. With success comes complacency. When you're used to being so successful at something for a very long time, doing it your way, it's hard to kind of get people to change their minds for certain things. That's why I always have so much respect for Nick Saban, because one thing about Nick Saban is that he doesn't take too long to adjust. Like, as soon as he started seeing all of these other offenses in college football running the no huddle or running a spread offense, guess what he did? He started finding offensive coordinators that knew how to run the spread offense, and he started running that thing. When people started using the transfer portal and NIL, Nick Saban pushed back against it, but eventually, guess what he started doing? Using the freaking transfer portal, using NIL. That's one thing that I always loved about Nick Saban. Like, this guy never hesitates to adapt. He's not really stubborn. Dabo Swinney is a definition of stubborn. This man refuses to change, and, you can't really knock him for that because it's worked. They've dominated the ACC for damn near every single season the past decade. But I think with Florida State now, with how they use the transfer portal, getting the number one ranked offensive tackle, and Jeremiah Byers out of the transfer portal, getting Casey Roddick transfer from Colorado to solidify their offensive line. You look at bringing in Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, and everything that they have gotten from the transfer portal this offseason. Clemson's going to see that, and they're going to be like, damn, bro, like, we could be an even better team if we were able to use the transfer portal and bring in other guys to solidify certain positions of needs. You see, that's going to be the reason why I think FSU is going to end up dethroning Clemson this season. Like, Clemson has a really good team, but they have some concerns when it comes to how good their wide receiving core is going to be. Their key addition wasn't a transfer portal player. They didn't have anybody big that transferred to the program. Clemson's biggest addition was offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. And I got a lot of respect for Garrett Riley. This dude did his thing at TCU. He got a lot of players on that TCU offense drafted into the NFL, including Max Duggan, who, if you watch Max Duggan's play last year, this dude was a good college quarterback, but when you try to evaluate him on an NFL level, he wasn't really all that great. Like, I was trying to watch some film on Quentin Johnston, and my homeboy's like, bro, like, let's just watch the highlights, man, because Max Duggan's is not all that great. And you saw it kind of against Georgia. So you bring in Garrett Riley, somebody who has the ability to elevate the whole entire offense and all of your personnel. That's going to be a really big plus. And you got to give Dabo Swinney a lot of props for that. Because in the past, Dabo Swinney normally was somebody who traditionally didn't really look to hire guys outside of his family circle or his coaching tree that he already has at Clemson. Normally, what Dabo Swinney does is hire from within. And when they brought back Jeff Scott, who formerly was the head coach at USF, I thought he was going to end up being their next offensive coordinator. I was like, oh man, here they go. Here they go. Hiring within, hiring and promoting within. It's going to backfire. But no, he went ahead and he robbed TCU of Garrett Riley. And that definitely is going to have a big impact on this offense. This offense is probably going to perform at a really high level compared to what it has in previous years. Many people try to put a lot of Clemson struggles on offense on DJ Uiagalelei. And even though he was a reason for why the offense wasn't good at times, the offensive coordinator didn't really do him any favors. And DJ Uiagalelei spoke out against that. He said that the scheme and the plays that Clemson was running really didn't put him in the best situation to succeed, in his opinion. And you bring in Garrett Riley, somebody who is able to elevate Max Duggan. Like, Max Duggan wasn't even the starting quarterback for TCU going into last season. So for this guy to go from backup QB to Heisman finalist under Garrett Riley shows you how good of an OC he is. And you do have Cade Klubnik, who I believe is going to be pretty good for Clemson. I don't know if he's going to end up being a top-level QB at Clemson, because judging from what I saw against Tennessee in the Orange Bowl, the stats show that he had a decent game. But if you actually go back and watch that game, I don't really think he was the greatest. And then when you look at the spring game, he didn't really do all that well. He had a really big underthrow in that spring game to one of the wide receivers earlier in that game, which could have been a touchdown if he put the ball in the proper place and that it needed to be. So I still have some reservations about how good Cade Klubnik is going to be. But I don't think the quarterback play is going to be a major issue. But going against this FSU secondary with the dogs that they have, I think that Clemson finally has a team that's going to be able to rival them. And it's been a while since there's been a team in the ACC that legitimately had a shot to win this conference. But you look at what Mike Norvell has done. I remember there was a point where this team had some really dark times. Like, there were people who were questioning if Mike Norvell should still be the head coach going into last season. These boys lost to Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State, like, do any of y'all know who or where Jacksonville State is? Like, this is an FCS school, and they went into Doak Campbell Stadium and not just beat them boys outright, but after the game, they planted their flag in the middle of their field. It doesn't get no disrespectful than that. And not just that, but this was an FCS school. So just think about how far Florida State has come. And the main knock that I hear on FSU isn't their talent. It's really, well, JT, they didn't really beat any highly ranked teams, and a lot of their games came down to the wire. And okay, and they were a 10-win football team. It doesn't matter how you win, as long as you win. This is a more talented football team than what it was last season. Last season, I don't think too many people expected FSU to win 10 games, but they did. All you was looking for last season was improvement. This season now, you're expecting to make a statement. You're expecting to win the ACC and potentially make it back to the college football playoffs. Something that you haven't been, or somewhere that you haven't been since that thing first got started years ago. It's crazy how the college football playoffs is about to expand, and maybe FSU might even end up being the last team of the the 4-team college football playoff model to get in, after they initially were one of the first teams to be in it during its inauguration. That's going to be a little bit insane. Imagine if we get Oregon back in that thing, which is a pretty good chance that thing happens. Imagine if FSU wins the ACC and Oregon wins the Pac-12 and they rematch in the semifinals of the college football playoffs. Like, that would be nostalgia at its finest. But my guy College Football with Sam says Clemson will win the regular season matchup, but Florida State will win the rematch in the championship game. Yeah, man, there's a really good chance that both these two teams split the season series when they play, but we most likely expect for Florida State and Clemson to make it to the ACC championship game unless something catastrophic happens. But Clemson has a really good team. I mean, they returned 4 out of 5 starters on the offensive line, which was a little bit of an issue last season. Even though their offensive line played better than what it did in 2021, it was still fairly inconsistent at times. They do lose 3 really good players in Myles Murphy, Byron Breesy, and Trent Simpson, but I'm not really too concerned about that because one thing about Clemson is that these boys like a factory when it comes to churning out elite talent on the defensive line. Them in Georgia, I don't know where the hell they find these defensive linemen at, but they know how to find them, boy. It's like a little factory. It's like choo-choo, choo-choo, choo-choo. Like, they just lose good guys in the defensive line and they replace them with guys who are just as good. Now, my question is, how good is that secondary going to be? Because at times, that secondary was getting dotted up. Now, they do have a really good group of corners. I do like their safety position. But at times, that secondary did have a tendency to get dotted up at times. Now, on the defensive line, you have a lot of production returning. One guy that I'm a really big fan of is Xavier Thomas. This guy has potential to be a top 15, maybe top 20 draft pick in next year's draft if he ends up breaking out this season. There are a lot of talented players that are coming back for Clemson's defense. They returned 9 starters from last season. So this defense should still be amongst the best in this conference and amongst the best in college football. Your only question is just going to be, is this offense going to be as good as Florida State's offense? Because Florida State is freaking stacked at every single position. Their offensive line, their running backs, their wide receivers. If they have an injury at wide receiver or running back, it doesn't really matter because they have great depth behind those guys. Clemson does have Will Shipley. They do return Antonio Williams, Bo Collins, but their offensive line, you still have a little bit of concern about it, and their wide receiver core, for the most part, fairly is full of guys who are highly recruited. They were highly touted coming out of high school, but they don't really have a lot of experience. But I think Florida State is going to end up knocking off Clemson for the ACC this upcoming college football season. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. My guy Detroit Sports Talks wants to know my thoughts on the Detroit Lions secondary. I think the Lions secondary should be better this year than what it was last year. You signed Emmanuel Mosley, Cam Sutton, you got Deuce, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So this secondary should be really solid. I don't know if it's going to be an elite group because Sam Sutton, he's a solid corner, but I don't know if he's an elite corner. And I think you can say the same thing about Emmanuel Mosley. But I think the Detroit Lions secondary should be vastly improved in 2023 compared to what it has been over the last couple of years. But this is it for this episode of the podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. And I will see you guys tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time, for another episode of JT Sports Live and the JT Sports Podcast. Leave us with the 5-star review if you enjoyed this episode. Remember that the JT Sports Podcast is not just available on YouTube. We are available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Share this episode if you enjoyed on your social media